Her name was Jen. With her sweatshirt sleeves rolled up, I noticed her right arm was covered in tattoos. She walked with a slight limp, and she was a bit disheveled. She wore glasses, and she seemed distracted from one moment to the next. Last weekend, Gail Bechtold and Joe Reyes and I participated in a learning cohort in Princeton. It was called the Bridges Project, and the weekend offered several different learning experiences, including one on Sunday afternoon when we broke into small groups and we waited for an unknown guest to join us. It was Jen who came into our group as an open human book. She is part of the Human Library, an international organization that seeks to break down stereotypes and judgments made about people who are marginalized in society. The people who share their experiences, like Jen, are the books, and those listening are the readers. Jen's book is called Unseen Disability. Jen sat down and explained she had suffered a traumatic brain injury from a snowboarding accident when she was 24 years old and has had 81 surgeries since the day of the accident. She was on a first date with her new boyfriend, and she fell backwards and she hit her head. He stayed with her, though, and he took care of her, and they eventually married and had a daughter. Now, Jen, she has difficulty with short-term memory and often forgets what she was just talking about. But she rebounds skillfully with a sharp sense of humor and an irrepressible optimism. And she is an expert on her condition and surrounds herself with a team of people who make her life possible, including her daughter, who is a teenager now, who she absolutely adores. We were encouraged to ask Jen any kinds of questions that would help us understand her better. And she opened up about her husband's struggle with alcohol addiction and how it eventually led to their divorce. She gleefully shared that she and her daughter, despite their situation and the advice that was coming from everyone, they made the decision to get a dog and then to get another one. I asked her about the tattoos on her right arm. Well, because of the accident, she has mostly no feeling on the right side of her body, and as a result, she tends to bang into things, like doorways, with her right arm. The tattoos are a visual reminder that she has a right arm. And also, each tattoo has significant meaning, depicting the journey she has been on since the accident. Everyone has a story. We all have different backgrounds. None of us know what another has been through until we listen and learn about them. Paul was writing to a faith community in Rome with many different kinds of people. Jews and non-Jews were now coming together to follow Jesus. Rome was a diverse city to begin with, and unavoidably, cultures were clashing, including in the early Christian church. Even then, in the church, people were making judgments and despising each other. Now, thank God we don't do that anymore. Paul addresses their quarreling and disagreeing over food customs and observance of holy days, and he writes, "Welcome those who are weak in the faith, but not for the purpose of quarreling over opinions. Some believe in eating anything, while the weak eat only vegetables. Those who eat must not despise those who abstain, and those who abstain must not pass judgment on those who eat, for God has welcomed them." It's as if Paul is saying, who are we to not welcome whom God has already welcomed? But when people are different from us and follow other customs and they worship in entirely different ways, look, we're inclined to judge them. Meanwhile, our next human book was Leslie Gallagher. Earlier, Leslie had been introduced to the cohort as the manager of the New York City Book Depot of the Human Library, but now she was sitting down with our small group, and her own book is called Biracial. She shared what it was like growing up in Morristown, New Jersey, with an African-American father and a white mother from Irish descent. Her parents were married and having children right around the time of Loving versus Virginia, when the Supreme Court ruled that the laws banning interracial marriage violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. But even if laws change, hearts take longer. And Leslie shared painful memories of being judged and the frustrations of having to explain herself when asked what race she was, and the looks she would get when out in public with her own children as people wondered if they were indeed hers. She also shared joyful memories as she talked about the different traditions that came from both sides of her vibrant, diverse family, two very different families that joined together, learned about each other, and welcomed each other. Who we are, our identity, our known selves in the world can be perceived and received in any number of ways. To be known and understood is our deep longing. But as human beings, we make snap judgment about others all the time. And when people start looking down on others, this is when the trouble begins. Paul's letter to the Romans encourages them to do better. He writes, "Why? Why do you pass judgment on your brother or sister? Or why do you despise your brother or sister? For we all stand before the judgment seat of God. In other words, we've not been asked to judge anyone. It's not our job. This is the work of God and God alone. We are all in this together, and in the eyes of God, we are all the same. There is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female, but we are all one in Jesus Christ. Now, can that belief of divine connectedness be extended to include even people who have not the slightest idea of who Jesus is? One of the resources mentioned at the Bridges Project last weekend was the Empathy Museum, which comes out of England, and it tours around the world and is known for its interactive experiences. And one of their programs is called A Mile in My Shoes. And the way it works is there is a large collection of shoes, actual pairs of shoes that belong to real people. And you pick out a box, and in the box, you find a pair of shoes and some headphones preloaded with recordings of the shoes owner telling something about themselves. These are people from all walks of life who've been through something worth sharing. So, you put on their shoes, and with the headphones, you walk around listening to their story. In one box are a pair of men's shoes, size 11. They are casual shoes, light brown suede, no laces, almost like a moccasin. They belong to Gary Mansfield, age 47. And this is his story. He was first arrested at the age of 13 for breaking into a school. His dad was a criminal, and he believed it was in his genes to also be a criminal. He fell in with some rough people as he got older and turned to illegal activities to get by. He knew some people who were making and selling counterfeit designer clothing. Well, one day he was hired to deliver some fake labels to a location in another town. He put 2 large bags filled with labels into his car, and as he drove off, he was ambushed by police vehicles from all directions. And he was arrested, and he was taken to the police station, and he was charged with distribution of heroin. He had been set up. And despite pleading that he had no idea what was in the bags, he was convicted and sentenced to 14 years and sent to a violent prison. Gary explains how prison hardened him and that he got into fights with other inmates and that he was obsessed with plans of revenge on the ones who did this to him. And then there is a shift. Through the prison's education program, he learns how to use a computer, and he discovers the world of art. So he dedicates himself to it. He studies all the great artists, and he finds that he too has a gift, and his work is quite good. In his recording, he shares that he taught others in the prison how to paint and how to draw. And they would come to him and they would ask him to draw something like a Disney character for their children. But he would invite them to draw alongside with him. Dangerous men who would punch you in the face if you looked at them wrong were now in his cell drawing Dumbo. Gary is a professional artist now. When he got out of prison, he started a family. But fears of the family curse make him worry about his young son, that he too will somehow get involved with crime. And near the end of his recorded message, he says, "But I am doing everything in my power for that not to happen. I'm lucky enough that I've got a great partner, and our children, they've got a very good outlook. They're very kind. They're very caring for other people. They're very good kids." Until we walk a mile in someone else's shoes, we will have little idea of who they are. Imagine a world where judgment is replaced with listening, where learning about someone replaces suspicion, where animosity and rejection gives way to welcoming. Building bridges to our community requires listening and getting to know where people are coming from and what they've been through. And when judgment is withheld, connection is possible. Who are we anyway but the stories we tell? Aren't we all human books? And to hear someone's story is to know them. To deeply, actively listen is to become part of their story, part of something sacred. Paul writes to those mismatched early followers of Jesus, and he reminds us today as well that there is something more important than ourselves. He says, and let us take this vow, he says, "Let us therefore no longer pass judgment on one another, but resolve instead to never put a stumbling block of hindrance in the way of another." God knows us very well and has welcomed us. This is how we can welcome each other. Amen.